In this video, we'll discuss the functions of hemoglobin and its relationship with oxygen at different levels and different types of hemoglobin. So what's the hemoglobin saturation at different PO2? Hemoglobin saturation in the arterial blood is 100% and hemoglobin saturation in the venous blood is 75%. So at a PO2 of 60 to 100 millimeters of mercury, hemoglobin is 100% saturated at a plateau, and it goes down when the oxygen pressure goes down below. And at a PO2 of 40 millimeters of mercury, hemoglobin is 75% saturated, and at a PO2 of 26.6 millimeters of mercury, hemoglobin is 50% saturated. This is the P50 of hemoglobin saturation, where it has two oxygen molecules attached to it. See here, from 100 to 60, the hemoglobin saturation is at a plateau, and then it goes down, and at a PO2 of 40, it's 75% saturated, and at a PO2 of 26.6 is 50% saturated, that is P50. The oxyhemoglobin curve is a S-shaped or sigmoid-shaped curve. The oxyhemoglobin curve may shift to the right or to the left. What happens if curve moves to right or left? Shifting the curve to the right means that it releases more oxygen, and shifting the curve to the left means that it decreases oxygen release to the tissue or increase binding of oxygen to hemoglobin. So what are the conditions that shift the curve to the right or oxygen delivery to the tissues or decrease the affinity of hemoglobin to oxygen are: number 1, increase activity of the tissues, and number 2, decrease pH, and number 3, increase 2,3-DPG, 2,3-diphosphoglycerate. So number 1 condition, the increased activity of the tissue, they include exercise, fever, and infection, in which the tissues become more active. And number 2, decrease pH may occur due to decreased pH, increase hydrogen ion concentration, and increase carbon dioxide concentration. They also move the curve to the right. And number 3, increase 2,3-DPG. 2,3-DPG binds to the beta chain of deoxygenated hemoglobin, and it facilitates the oxygen delivery to the tissues. Where does oxygen binds to hemoglobin? Hemoglobin has 2 alpha and 2 beta chains, each containing an iron in a reduced form, the ferrous form, to attach with oxygen. What happens if hemoglobin has iron in oxidized or ferric form? Iron must be in a reduced form in the hemoglobin in order to bind oxygen reversibly, so it can be delivered to the tissues. If hemoglobin has iron in oxidized or ferric form, then it binds to oxygen very tightly, does not release oxygen. It's a high oxygen binding and does not release the oxygen. So no oxygen is delivered to the tissues. That shifts the curve to the left, and the condition is known as methemoglobinemia. So what are the clinical and lab features of methemoglobinemia? There is characteristic bluish brown muddy color, hypoxic symptoms with cyanosis, with normal PO2 and fully saturated hemoglobin. Because oxygen is not released from the hemoglobin, patient is cyanosis and hypoxic symptom, but still PO2 and hemoglobin are normal. So what's the big difference in the oxygen binding of fetal hemoglobin with the adult hemoglobin? In fetal hemoglobin, beta chain is replaced by gamma chain, and gamma chain doesn't bind strongly to 2,3-DPG. It doesn't have the beta chain which binds with the 2,3-DPG. Fetal hemoglobin curve is therefore to the left of oxyhemoglobin curve, and it takes oxygen from the maternal blood because it has a more affinity for oxygen. What factor determines the oxygen amount in the blood? Amount of oxygen in the blood is determined by amount of oxygen dissolved, hemoglobin concentration, and affinity of hemoglobin to oxygen. What happens in exercise? In exercise, increased carbon dioxide production decreases the pH, so it increases the delivery of oxygen to the tissues, moving the curve to the right. During exercise, the mean values of arterial PO2, PCO2, and pH do not change much. Venous PCO increases in exercise. PO2 in exercising muscle is close to 0. So how exercising muscle get oxygen? During exercise, the blood supply of the contracting muscle is cut off, so it doesn't get oxygen by the blood or by hemoglobin. So exercising muscle get oxygen from myoglobin, which is a muscle protein. Myoglobin is very similar in structure to hemoglobin, but it releases oxygen only at a very low PO2.